Hey everyone, today we're going to be going over a few news items over the past few weeks that I think are very interesting and worth noting. First, we're going to start with the confirmation hearings of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was tapped by Trump to be the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. As part of the preliminary Senate committee meetings, he was questioned by multiple people. One of the interactions I'd like to highlight is between him and Bernie Sanders.
So let me ask Mr. Kennedy again. If we want to make America healthy, will you assure the American people that you will fight to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to every single American?
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? That's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
And
protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had small contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
tax.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in the industry.
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but
in 2016 and 2020, Bernie Sanders ran for president, and part of his campaign was focusing on the issues that everyday Americans were feeling. One of the major issues he talked about was drug prices.
Because of the high cost of prescription drugs. And today we announce loudly and clearly that we will no longer accept the greed of the pharmaceutical industry.
He was advocating for lower drug costs, and he highlighted the greed found in these pharmaceutical companies. Despite not getting a single Democratic vote, RFK Jr. was confirmed as the new Secretary for Health and Human Services on February 13, 2025. The next confirmation I'm going to talk about is Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard was tapped as Trump to be the new Director of National Intelligence. On the day of Gabbard's hearing, Edward Snowden posted on X that she should denounce any whistleblowers. That would obviously include himself. Now, what I thought was quite a statement was that multiple times in the hearing, Gabbard was pressed by senators on both the left and the right to specifically denounce Edward Snowden as a traitor. And yet, she refused to use those words while continually denouncing whistleblowing in of itself.
And the concern among so many here, and I think what a lot of the folks in the intelligence community that you'd have the responsibility to oversight is, they want to hear that you also believe the same thing, that not just he broke the law, but that he's a traitor, because they don't want that to ever happen again. And all the sources that they had, that they trusted and that trusted them, now their lives were at risk. And all the programs that they had that were determined lawful all collapsed, and that intelligence then was gone, and the president didn't have access to a lot of information for decision making. So this is a big deal to everybody here, because it's a big deal to everybody that you'll also oversee in that role as well. And so it's helpful for them to be able to hear your heart on this. So was Edward Snowden a traitor?
Senator, my heart is with my commitment to our Constitution and our nation's security.
Ours too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have shown throughout my almost 22 years of service in the military, as well as my time in Congress, how seriously I take the privilege of having access to classified information and our nation's secrets. And that's why I'm committed, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to join you in making sure that there is no future Snowden-type leak. And I would do so by taking 4 specific actions. Number 1, again, to make sure that there are no illegal and unconstitutional programs. Limiting in a big way those who have access to our nation's top secrets through security clearance reform, making sure that every single person in the workforce knows about the legal whistleblower channels available to them, and making sure that there's a direct line available to me should anyone have concerns. If people choose to step outside of those legal channels to raise any concerns about programs or actions that exist within the intelligence community that are classified, there will be no excuse to do so, and they should be charged and prosecuted under the law.
Was he a traitor at the time when he took America's secrets, released them in public, and then ran to China and became a Russian citizen?
Senator, I'm focused on the future and how we can prevent something like this from happening again.
Again, despite the narrow margin, Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed as the new Director of National Intelligence. Finally, I'm going to show a clip from the preliminary hearings for Kash Patel. In this clip, I think we see the full art of political theater at play.
Is that who we want running the FBI? I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know,
you
my entire
glorified
life,
it in song,
and I did
Mr.
not
Patel.
make a single dime out of
In
it.
song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that answer.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Patel.
Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump held a joint press conference together where they were asked questions by the press. One of Trump's statements was specifically about what would happen with Gaza and how he had a view of it coming under U.S. control.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
While this plan is not very detailed, both him and Marco Rubio later confirmed that no U.S. troops would be involved in this operation.
Now, the details of that, if it was accepted, would have to be worked out among multiple partner nations. It's a unique offer, one that no other country in the world has stepped up and made an offer. But I think it's one people need to think about. Seriously, it was not meant as a hostile move. It was meant as I think, a very generous move, the offer to rebuild and to be in charge of the rebuilding of a place, many parts of which right now, even if people move back, they would have nowhere to live safely because there are still unexploded munitions and debris and rubble.
Trump's Gaza plan received a lot of mixed reactions from both the left and the right.
Yeah, I think there's problematic. I think American troops being involved in that area seldom works that well.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not who we are as a nation to be looking at displacing people from their land and taking it over.
Is that now American foreign policy?
It's no, and it's nonsense.
Well, the president has certainly been thinking outside the box.
Is there even a box in this case?
Right.
Senator, can we have a reaction to Donald Trump's proposal on Gaza?
I already talked about a kink in the slinky.
Do you even take his proposal seriously?
You have to take him seriously.
Look, I think ultimately what we want is what's best for the people of Gaza. We want them to have an opportunity where they can prosper and be safe. And so obviously we'll continue to engage in conversations about that and how you keep the people of Israel safe as well.
But were you shocked by President Trump's
we'll
announcement?
We'll continue to be
that now American foreign policy?
To the entire area. We'll continue to be committed.
I think what we'll have to do is just wait and see if any more details come out about this plan, and we'll make sure to go over them when they do. The Trump administration recently put out a memo called A Fork in the Road, and here he offered defer resignation for federal employees who would like to leave and get paid through September 10th of this year. This memo discussed 4 pillars. The first pillar was return to office. During COVID, many federal employees began to work remotely or in a hybrid form. This ended on Monday, February 17th. The second pillar, performance culture, highlights the new performance standards that federal employees will be held to. The third pillar, a more streamlined and flexible workforce, highlights the fact that some agencies will see an increase in employment. However, most federal agencies will see a large decline in workforce. The fourth pillar, enhanced standards of conduct, highlights the fact that federal employees will be held to the ethical standards given to them by this administration. It also threatens disciplinary action or termination for those that do not adhere to these standards. As of February 15, 75,000 federal employees have accepted this. The offer, however, is now closed, leaving many federal employees worried about their future employment. The next topic we're going to go over is the change in the stance on DEI from this new administration. Trump ran on the promise of ending DEI during his 2024 campaign, and it seems like a lot of his promises to end it are now being realized. The acting assistant secretary of the Department of Education, Craig Traynor, put out a memo recently. In the memo, he cited the Students for Fair Admissions vs. Howard Supreme Court decision in 2023. The court explained that classifying and assigning students based on their race is lawful only if it satisfies strict scrutiny, which means that any use of race must be narrowly tailored that is necessary to achieve a compelling interest, and that nebulous concepts like racial balancing and diversity are not compelling interests. In this memo, he threatens the loss of funding to educational institutions that continue to use DEI hiring practices as well as are involved in any sort of DEI programs. While this move away from DEI from the current administration is seen through this memo, it can also be seen in the market. Many companies, such as Meta, Target, Walmart, John Deere, Nissan, and Toyota, have all come out recently rescinding their previous engagement with DEI at the company level. Next, I'd like to share some clips with you from a few podcasts that I watched recently that I found extremely interesting and thought-provoking. The first podcast I'm going to talk about is the Joe Rogan Experience, who had Mike Benz on last week. Mike Benz was on previously in December of 2024. Mike Benz is a former assistant secretary under the Housing and Urban Development for Trump's first term, and then he was an assistant secretary for international communications. Mike Benz has recently been making his rounds on extremely popular podcasts online, such as the Joe Rogan Experience, also Tucker Carlson, Patrick Bet-David, and Sean Ryan. In this podcast, he discusses how monies paid for by the U.S. government to USAID through other third-party NGOs are distributed to international communities for multiple reasons: to foment revolution, to quell free speech, to ensure that U.S. interests are held abroad. In this clip, Mike Benz talks about how through monies given by USAID, CEPS is involved in training judges in Brazil in how to combat free speech, specifically free speech that bolsters Bolsonaro, the previous Brazilian president.
But this is the man that they call the Lord Voldemort judge of Brazil. This is the head of the TSE, the censorship court, which is the subgroup of their Supreme Court. And here you see a seminar that he is being trained in. Does that name ring a bell? SEPS? How many hours have you and I now spent talking about the SEPS program, the USAID program that explicitly set its job to get foreign countries and foreign courts to pass censorship laws? This is USAID funded and implemented by the National Endowment for Democracy. This is SEPS.org. But this gets much. If you go back to the panel, I'll show you more on this. All right. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. SEP's core partner, IFES, this is basically the election strengthening, teaming up directly with Brazil's TSE court. That is the censorship court that seized X's, that shut down X, and that seized Starlink's assets, and that effectively criminalized the speech of virtually any significant pro-Bolsonaro voice in Brazil. This is our USAID network doing the training, doing the networking. And wait, if you go back, I'm just going to show a couple more of these. Okay, this is Internews. Internews, who we covered, $500 million from USAID every single year in Brazil, doing training seminars for how to flag pro-Bolsonaro disinformation. I can go on and on. I got layers of all these different judges and the pitches to the prosecutors to arrest it. The whole thing was a USAID Truman show taking over the judiciary, or at least substantially influencing and tilted to take out their political enemy, Bolsonaro, the whole way down.
At the end of the clip, he shows how both X and SpaceX were targeted by Brazilian prosecutors directly involved in this free speech suppression. The next clip is from a podcast with Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan. This was a very interesting podcast, I think, because both of these men are known as interviewers more than conversationalists. And yet I think this interaction highlights a conversation more so than an interview. Both of them end up talking over each other a lot throughout this podcast. So if you're going to listen to it, be prepared. But there were several moments that I think are worth noting. And the one I'm going to share here is where they talk about Zelensky.
Look, I'm just saying self-determination is the core idea in democracy. They don't have it in Ukraine because they haven't had an election. They ignore the election because it's run by a dictator called Zelensky. If you wanted to say he's a dictator, that's fine. You support a dictator. The U.S., your government has supported many dictators, so is mine. That's kind of a fact of life. There are very few democratically elected leaders. Sometimes even our leaders aren't really democratically elected, as you know. I just don't like the moral bullshit that attaches to all of this.
That's fair enough.
Where we tell the population, we're on the side of democracy, and he's Winston Churchill.
I don't claim it's Mother Teresa against Hitler.
No, but you have, though. He's a marvelous person.
I like him. I'm allowed to, aren't I?
I guess you like dictators. I've never said of Putin he's a marvelous person because, it's a little dictatory for me. I think he's really smart. I admire what he's done to Russia, but I'm not going to sniff his jock because he's kind of a dictator. But you're like, oh, I love that Zelensky. He's so great.
I do like him.
How can you like a man who's a dictator?
I don't think he's a dictator.
In what sense? He's not elected. He rules by force. He rules with guns. He kills his opponents. He's assassinated a ton of people, including, I know someone he tried to assassinate. Fact. How is that worth supporting? Do you feel a little guilty for supporting someone like that?
No, I don't.
Really?
No, in fact, I think we should try and do more to help him win.
My biggest takeaway from this podcast is how two people with such extremely different opposing views can still be cordial and have a strong relationship outside of that. The last podcast I'm going to talk about is a very controversial one. Candace Owens has recently been doing a series on Brigitte Macron, the wife of Emmanuel Macron, where she claims Brigitte was born a man. Now, I'm not going to be speaking to these claims. However, the thing that I found most intriguing about it was that Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France, sent U.S. attorneys to send her a letter directly engaging in this conversation that she's having about his wife.
So let's jump into this letter that we received, and I'll explain to you what they're referencing and what we said back to them in our letter. So you can see it starts with letting us know that this is regarding, for instance, in the corner there, confidential, not for publication or attribution. I really fail at that. Then they say it's regarding false and defamatory statements about Presidential Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron. They say, we write again on behalf of our clients, President and Mrs. Macron. That's the last time I think you're going to hear really about Brigitte. We were disappointed in your January 16, 2025 response to our December 3rd, 2024 letter. Despite our warnings and with full knowledge of their falsity, your client has doubled down on her defamatory allegations. We're going to get to those, and indeed expanded the scope of her defamation. We had wanted to spare Ms. Owens the embarrassment of openly confronting her false claims, but instead of doing the right and responsible thing, it seems she relishes in the public attention.
Clearly, in this memo, the Macrons do not want Candace to continue this series. However, as of the 17th of February, no defamation lawsuit has been filed against Candace Owens. Regardless of what comes out from this investigative series, we are now seeing a shift where information is no longer siloed through large news corporations such as CNN or BBC or Fox or MSNBC, but we're now seeing online independent journalists garnering the attention from international political leaders. And finally, we'll wrap up on this. This is a topic that I've personally been looking into: gold. Now, gold has always been seen as hard money versus something like fiat currency such as the US dollar. This graph here highlights how, while the price of gold has continued to increase and increased drastically over the recent years, the price of the US dollar has decreased fairly substantially. Gold prices recently hit a record high, as well as the COMEX, which shows the futures of gold, also increasing at a parabolic rate. This signifies that there are many countries and large financial institutions that expect a lot of insecurity in the financial markets moving forward. This can be highlighted through the London gold market, which on average would have a 2 to 3 wait time for gold to be delivered to buyers, which now is extended to 6 to 8 weeks. Also, borrowing fees for gold have more than doubled recently. This is a massive change and very foreboding. Thank you all for watching. And if any of these topics were interesting to you, I suggest that you go look into them, watch some podcasts, look at some graphs. There's a lot to learn out there. I'll end with a quote from Thomas Jefferson. "A well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny." Stay informed, everyone.